And gentlemen, welcome to Beyond the White Noise Paranormal Sunday show. Tonight, my co-host, Mo Gunnery, and I have on the one, the only, Thomas Durant. Thomas, thank you very much for coming on, and welcome.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me on the show. I'm really honored to be here, and it's always fun talking to you guys.
You know what? The one thing I'm going to say is we've came on slightly late due to the fact that the conversation we were having was more interesting than keeping tabs on time.
Sorry, guys.
No, that was all. No, Thomas, that was epic, dude.
Put it this way: if we overran the show due to the fact that you were telling us about your collection of bird calling sounds or your train number collection, then maybe I'd sit there and go, we really just wasted all our time. But as I said, as conversations go, the past half an hour of pre-show conversation, which we're meant to use for sound check, for everything else, it's gone down the pan. And you know what? I'd rather, if it was going to go down the pan, it'd go down the pan that way. I'm over the moon with that. That was brilliant. But no, I am going to say I've been looking forward to this show. I genuinely have. Now, I think when Kate set it up and Kate messaged me to let me know, he said, well, we're going to get Mr. Durant on. I'm like, superb. Let's see how this one pans out. Normally, as I say, you look at somebody's... whenever we get a guest on, we normally do a bit of research on the guest. And the first massive problem you get, with researching a guest is when you go to their, for instance, their IMDb page, or you go to their Facebook page, and every single picture's arms folded with the grumpy look and all that. And you normally look, and you know what? I've seen more photographs of you smiling than straight-faced, and I take it as a compliment. It's normally all we get is the guys dressed as SWAT teams and all that, but no, this is... I'm pleasantly surprised, especially...
I like to call myself the happy demonologist, even though I'm not a fan of demonologist. But, I mean, look, the way I look at it, in my field, the things you deal with are so nasty and so negative that why do I have to be a grumpy jerk, going into a case? There's no reason for it. People need to feel like you're approachable in order to open up and tell you what's actually been happening. Because a lot of people really think they're going crazy when they have these phenomenon occurring in their home. So I want to make it as easy as possible on them, and I also just know that the happier and lighter I am, the less the activity can affect me. And I've found that over doing this for 15 years now. I mean, it really is, the better my attitude going into a case, the less effect the entities have been able to have on me.
No, that's cool. You started this, I mean, as you said yourself, you've been into this now for 15 years. Now, you started at a time when the internet was pretty much at its infancy, where usefulness is concerned. You could go on the internet to look for porn and buy stuff on eBay when eBay first started. There was nothing much else you could do with it. Maybe a little bit of reading. Now, when you started this, you had nothing but, obviously, books and a little bit of light media to use. How did you manage to get yourself to where you are now from where you started?
Oh, God. Trial and error. I mean, honestly, a lot of it was when I was like, oh God, I can't remember. I think I was 13 when I started reading Hans Holzer's book Ghosts.
Yeah,
it was something like that. There were several books I read when I was really young that helped me develop my understanding of that. Another thing was the Time Life series on the paranormal. I read every single one of those, from UFOs to ghosts and spirits, and it's just, I read whatever I could get my hands on. It was the only thing I was interested in reading. I never liked books, but for some reason the research material was like, oh, this is really cool. Let me read this and let me read that. And then in 2004, I met a team that had been doing this for about a year, and they ran things because the head of the team was a more military type personality. So everything was run very by the book and very critical and scientific, and I liked it. So I worked with them, because before that I was more on the psychic spiritual path.
I see.
And it was, look, there's a lot of crazy when it comes to that, and everyone wants to believe they're right. I'm always open to understanding things a little bit better, so I'm not always going to be right. But I know that learning through other people's mistakes is a good way to go, because I don't want to make the same mistakes other people have made.
Yeah.
And so, working with different spiritualists and different belief systems for a little bit, and then working with this team, and then I was fortunate enough a few years later to meet John Zaffis, who has become a really amazing friend and just a great sounding board, because he's got 40 years of experience in the field, So he was another guy who helped me kind of understand some stuff better, and I learned a lot, and just growing through reading. And it really is growing through reading. I mean, I have books, like Barry was saying on the show he did with you guys a few weeks back. I've got books that go back to the 1100s or manuscripts from earlier that have been translated, and I read these because there's contextual understanding of these entities as far back as written history.
Yeah.
And so by understanding the birth of these things, or what we know is the first recordings of these things, I can better understand the phenomenon, I can better understand how people dealt with it, and then try to apply that in a more modern sense to help people now.
Well, that's perfect, and it's a really good way of looking at it. The one thing that is in the back of my mind when you were mentioning that then is, do you notice an evolution from one point to another point, or is it a consistent, from what you've read in the books that you've got to what you see now, is it a consistent, like, not pattern, but has it changed?
Some things have changed. Some things have changed, and this is something I talk a lot about with other people in my field of the malevolent hauntings, where especially in the last 7 years or so, there's been a strange development in even how these creatures or entities manifest or interact with one another, because it used to be not many entities would want to work together, but then entities that used to be solitary will now work with other entities of the same type or different type, and it's a very strange pattern that's been emerging. But then also using the same stimuli to try to get rid of these entities isn't as effective. So part of what I've been doing is using my spiritual background, is working with my own meditative techniques and what I believe are spirit guides or spirit allies to use intuition to find different methods that are a little unconventional, not based solely on literary material from the past, but more of a hodgepodge of that and intuitive decisions to try to help lessen the problems, and it seems like it works.
Do you see that, Thomas, that on social media, it seems everybody's a demonologist?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody and my mom is a demonologist. And I don't mean that negative towards you one bit, but people that I've talked to, I'm like, there's not a snowball's chance if I had a dark haunt happening where I live, I would call you in, this, not you, but I would call this person in. And I keep looking at most pretty flower he's wearing. Anyhow. Yeah, that's like throwing me off, but I don't know.
There's a lot of people out there who they think they do one case and all of a sudden they're an expert. And for me, I have been doing it for years before people that are in the field, that have been in the field much longer than me, said, you do the work. You are one of us, in a way. Mm-hmm. And that was the only time when I decided to embrace the term, because honestly, I just hate the term. I think demonologist is constricting because it means you're in the Judeo-Christian mindset only. I think it also means that you're more interested in the title than doing the actual work, which is why I tend to call myself more of a paranormal consultant, because I think that's a little more appropriate.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's people who charge money for it, which I find absolutely absurd. There's no possible way to prove what you're doing works or is even an actual service. So how can you charge somebody? And I've had clients come to me, they've been charged thousands of dollars by people to try to remove entities. And the mindset they go about it, it's a very strange hodgepodge of either magical practices stolen from Wicca or magical practices stolen from here, or sometimes it's just purely Christian. And you could spout Latin prayers all you want in an entity, but if it's not from that belief system, it ain't gonna care.
If it's Native American, it's not gonna listen to a priest.
Well, what's an elemental gonna do? Right, you have an elemental, which is something that supposedly has been here since the birth of the planet, and yet you have somebody spouting Latin at it. I mean, I had one case where I was working with a friend of mine, David Harvey, who's a museum guy as well. He's another historian, and him and I were on a case where we did we dealt with something that I believe was a Rakshasa, which is a Hindu demon. Okay. And as I was doing my test to see what it would react to understand better how I could diagnose it, I actually said something in Latin, and it responded, "Priestly Latin does not work." So I was like, good, now I know that that's useless. Let's move on. And that's the thing. It's like you could go in with one tool set, but it's never going to be enough.
Yeah, but at least from what you've just said there, you go in with an intelligence as opposed to, I seen it on Ghost Adventures, so I want to learn how to do it and become the demonologist, what the young kids now believe is the way forward. Do you know what? There's a fashion. Now, as I said, you've been in it for a while now, so you're totally exempt to any form of fashion that there actually is with regard to this. But all of a sudden, they bring on people onto a certain show, and the person happens to be a demonologist. Next minute, everybody on Facebook and everybody on social media becomes that demonologist, or at least a demonologist.
Yeah.
It's sad, but again, if just because you hand me a gun doesn't make me a marksman. I could never do it. It's silly. But I mean, again, it's what we're stuck with at the moment with regards to social media. It's sort of making the entire paranormal field dumb.
Yeah, I mean, and we saw this. I mean, when Ghost Hunters came out, we kind of saw this in the birth of Paranormal Investigators too.
Yeah.
It was everybody and their mother now became a paranormal investigator because it was trendy. And Destination America and other networks are now promoting the demonology end of things because it gets ratings. And so everybody and their mother's a demonologist. I mean, look, they just had Bishop Long doing a live exorcism, quote unquote, on TV, and I mean, I can't believe that even aired because he's not even part of the actual Vatican Church, so it can't be an exorcism. It's not sanctioned by the Vatican. So, I mean, that's the essence of what that is. He could do a cleansing, a banishing, a clearing, a blessing. You know, he can do things like that. But, I mean, to say he's doing an exorcism, it's just for ratings. And that's the problem with TV is ultimately, at the end of the day, people want ratings.
Yeah. No, 100%. I totally agree. Now, on the subject of TV, this isn't your day job, is it?
No, I don't charge for my services as a paranormal consultant because I don't believe in it. So my day job is actually I work in television as a producer/editor.
You're a supervising editor?
Yeah, well, I have been for the last, oh God, forever. I've been the supervising editor of Ice Road Truckers for about 5 years, and then X-Men for about 3 years, and then I was the editor on Deadliest Catch. Yeah,
I've got cool, man.
I've got this poster. The other poster you can't see is the one where everybody wrote nasty things to me because I had to leave the show early. So I have a poster that's basically scrawled on with terrible things.
Dear Thomas, we're going to miss you. We hate you in the face, you horrible individual. You left
exactly.
us.
Thanks, Twitter. You know, all of those good things. But, you know, sometimes when you do the same show over and over for a while, you get bored. And, you know, for me as an artist, I want to be creative. So I had to take off for a little bit and do a couple of other shows for National Geographic. And now I've come back and just finished Ice Road Season 9. Oh, my God, I can't believe the show's been going on that long. Yeah. And the next thing I'm jumping on to after X-Men this year is going to be a spin-off show of Deadliest Catch that's based in the Pacific Northwest, and it's going to be a great show. Like, I would say whatever we wanted to do with Deadliest Catch that we never could fully realize will happen in this show, which is good.
Captain Sig, or what's his name, going to be in it?
No. We're going to keep all new. We have all new captains. We're going to keep those guys in Dutch Harbor. But
okay, Dutch Harbor. All new captains. I watched the show. Sorry, I like the show actually.
You probably watch the show a lot more than I do. When you see
you see it before anybody sees it, though. That's the best part.
Well, kind of. You also see all the mistakes, and you're like, oh, God, how are we going to work around this to make the story clear?
It's the worst thing you can do. Worst thing you can do is put a group of men in a confined environment and expect them to all be nice. It doesn't work. It just doesn't. No matter what field you're in, it doesn't work. It's just the way it is. But now, with regards to the field that you're in, and with regards to the way TV and media is misconstruing it, how do you feel it's gonna go? Can it end well?
I mean, it's gonna. I think it'll get worse before it gets better. So I think we're gonna see a lot more of these. I mean, especially because I don't know exactly what the ratings were on the live exorcism, but I'm assuming it was the best thing Destination America had. So I think we're gonna see more of these terrible shows that depict it as. I mean, look, it basically is trying to turn a field that is legitimately dangerous into the show Supernatural, is what they're trying to do.
Yeah, so basically pulling risk.
Yeah, I mean, they don't ever really talk about the risk unless it's just pure fear-mongering, which I don't believe in that. Why add fear to something that's already really intense? I mean, I always tell people the truth. I say, don't do this because I only did this because it picked me. I feel like this is a field that I got into because it was just always there. It always interested me, and I think a lot of it had to do with being able to let go of my ego, because that is what gets people hurt. When you have ego and you go and you think you're smarter or better than whatever this thing is, look, it's been around for over 1,000 years. I don't care what you think. A thing that's been here for over 1,000 years is sure as hell going to be a lot smarter than you. So you have these people that like to rush in and get involved, and then they end up getting hurt, and that's the sad truth. Or people like like our friends, or my friends, the Constantinos, before the tragedy that happened not too long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone in the field of malevolent hauntings tried to help them because they did have something in their home that was malicious, and it was terrible, and it was very old, and including myself, I was over their home, and I knew what they were dealing with, and it's not pleasant, and nobody should have to live like that, and nobody should want to live like that.
There I know was a lot going on behind the scenes with the Constantinos. That not now. I'm not talking about present. What happened? The tragedy. But before that, they weren't getting a lot of jobs, and it wasn't paying the bills. And
Yeah, it's hard
they were.
because they were doing a lot of these conventions. Many of the conventions they did were either out of their own dime or they were just paid minimal amount to go. And Mark had a steady, good-paying job when he was back there, but then when they take off so often to do these things, it was hard to, because they were trying to follow their passion. They were trying to do what they loved as a regular job in order to survive with it, but there's just not enough. You can't, first of all, you can't trust conventions in the paranormal community because everybody wants to do one, and then they fall apart and people don't get paid. I mean, I've seen this happen over and over and over again. So it's sort of a gamble they took, and I think it took a toll on Mark's job situation, and that made things hard for them.
It went downhill pretty much from there.
Right.
I mean, they were kind of exploited, I think, by, and I will say, and this is me saying this, and not Thomas or Mo, that I think they were exploited by the guys on Ghost Adventures. I don't know if they had a falling out, but I think they were truly exploited by those guys when they were on from, what was it, 2011 was the last time they were on, I think. I think they were truly exploited by
the one thing you've got to look at, though, with regards to TV, and again, Thomas, hopefully you will agree with me on this, just because what you see on a TV show is not necessarily everything that goes on and everything that happens.
Absolutely.
90% of the time, like, for instance, where Ghost Adventures as a show is concerned, and this isn't, not by any means is this video cast going to be Ghost Adventures, and this is the way the world sees our show. I don't really like that much talking about Ghost Adventures as a show, other than the fact that every once in a while they bring in a piece of equipment that I like try and dissect like a geek. But nevertheless, when they were on the shows run for 3 days. They do 3 days worth of filming and then cram it as one episode of 40 minutes.
At least.
So how much they don't use compared to how much they do use with regards to footage that they get is astronomical. And I can pretty much, I can confidently say that 90% of the show that you see is probably not what it seems. So, I mean, where Ghost Adventures is concerned, I think that...
all the shows are like that, though. I mean, even when John was on Haunted Collector, one of the things he would often mention is, like, I don't remember that, or, like, I can't believe they cut it, so I say that. And every show does that. Like, I mean, even with what we do, you have to take, like, for Ice Road Truckers, thousands of hours of content and turn it into a 45-minute show. Like, our characters go out for 3-day trips on the road, and we have to make 3 days, 4 days into basically 15 minutes of content or less. So there's a lot of just having to simplify ideas because it would just be too much explanation, a lot of trying to get through things faster, or in the sense of the paranormal shows, what they have to do is they have to make it interesting, because we all know what our job is. You go into a house, usually we're sitting for 8 hours staring at a blank wall doing nothing. So I would say that to make that interesting, there's definitely multiple days of shooting, but then there's also got to be those, oh, did you hear that kind of moments? And I'm sure almost all of these shows, those moments are built on purpose, or even if the talent doesn't necessarily know, the producers are in on it and make stuff happen, because you can't have a TV show where nothing happens.
Oh, no. Well, remember when Ghost Hunters first came out? They actually filmed it where nothing happened. And I think, and then all of a sudden you saw it progress, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see. Rating time. Time the, Big Boss Man is coming down about the ratings. And then all of a sudden every show, you have something big. Yeah, something big.
Well, it's almost always the network. The network is king. I mean, they sell advertising in order to make the money to buy the show. And if you can't make the advertisers happy, then they don't want your show. So to do
Yeah.
that, something has to happen.
Yeah,
Or
I
you
just think it's big boss there. You
yeah,
know,
I mean that's why you
whoever.
can't trust those shows for much, because yeah, there's some good things about them and there's some insight you'll get or some equipment that will come out of it, but you know, at the same time, is it really worth exploiting the field and making anybody feel like they should be doing this? Because I've seen people just with paranormal investigating go out and get affected by spirit and get hurt, or get hurt because they go into an abandoned location that they shouldn't be in and fall
Yeah.
through floorboards. You know what I mean? Like it's not a really safe hobby if you want to just go out and have fun. But
Right.
it seems like a lot of people take it as that. And I just think
Yeah.
if you want to do this, treat it a little bit less like a hobby and more like a passion, and do your research and do your due diligence and find teams that are credible, find people that are credible to work with, and not just like say, because I've had people that I've talked to once and they're like, oh, I learned from Tommy Durant. And it's like, well, I had a conversation with you, but I wouldn't call you an acolyte or anything, so I don't know where you're getting that from. But, you know, work with somebody for a year, 2 years and learn from them. But, you know, then you run into the problem, Mo, that you were talking about earlier, where there are some teams that the paradrama happens and
Yeah.
things go on and people don't want to follow through because it's a hobby, so they want the dessert, but they don't want to do the work. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, exactly.
I want my cake, but I don't want to write a report. Well, then
Yeah.
don't go on the investigation because the client is counting on that.
Yeah, no, I can totally agree. I totally understand. Especially, it's a weird world to look at, and especially where television's concerned, it does misconstrue people into believing that what they see on television, the glamorized version of the way the field is, that you could just go out, get a camera, run into a building, the next minute you are the next Zach Bagans, or people look at it for the wrong reasons. Don't get me wrong, where you're concerned, TV it's your life effectively. It pays your bills. It keeps you going where you're going, and that's not a bad thing, not by any stretch of the imagination. Plus the fact that you are that heavy into the field as well. That's also good for you. You're not doing what the other shows have done. You're not. I mean, don't get me wrong. You've probably got the better chance than any to give yourself, or at least to plug forward some form of show and go for it if you wanted to. And by you haven't put yourself into the Zach Bagan situation, and I think that's brilliant. But where the shows are concerned, do you believe there is any shows which are actually credible?
Loaded question. We throw question bombs all the time.
No, it's fine. It's an appropriate question. I mean, when Haunted Collector was on, it was one of the better shows in terms of at least knowing John, and it's funny because I know John, but I also knew the VP of the production company at the time too, so I get the two different sides of it.
Just fiction column there, yeah.
But it was one of those shows that at least I know that for the most part it was as credible as a show like that could possibly be. Okay. You know, and I know Dustin works really hard to make sure Ghost Hunters is credible on his end, what he can do. But again, he's one guy, and he really tries. So I think there's people that really try to keep the integrity, and that's what we should be looking at as opposed to what show is credible, because I don't know if I believe any show is fully credible, because even my ghost story, it's like people are sitting telling their story sensationalized with these dramatizations, and how much of that is accurate, how much of it is people saying, well, I'll embellish because I'm on TV. Because there is a lot of that. I mean, a lot of people want to be on television. I never wanted to be, which was the funny part. It's like I end up doing these interviews. Yeah, I know. I end up doing these interviews because I was just, like I said before, my friend said, hey, you're the least crazy person that I've talked to in this field. Can you come out and chat with us? And I'm like, fine. And, you know, for that, doing interviews, it makes sense. But, I mean, in terms of going out and investigating, that's not anything I want to do because I know what happens in the edit. Living in the edit bay, I know what happens no matter what I say. It could be cut, frankenbit is what we call it. You could be frankenbit into almost anything else if there's enough vowels and syllables. So why put myself in that position when I've worked really hard to maintain my credibility in this field?
Yeah, you need to start making sex tapes and get rich. Not personally making them, but editing them and making them. That'd be good.
Yeah, no, you know, I've never had these aspirations of getting rich and exploiting people to get ahead. So I'm gonna just stay with that. It's worked okay for me so far.
Hey, did you do a lot of investigating when you were up in New England, Boston?
Yeah, I did a fair amount. I mean, mostly in Cape Cod. I did a little bit in Manchester. Spent a lot of time in Rhode Island, so out in Exeter, Rhode Island, and Pawtucket, Fall River, Mass. I mean, various areas here and there.
Yeah, those areas are like hotbeds. I mean, something about New England.
Well, it's old.
so different. It's so cool because it's so different than other parts. You know, I'm from Maryland, so that's where I live. So I'm down in there, and then you go deep south, and you know, it's everybody's got their own thing. But I always think that up in that neck of the woods, I mean, the folklore, the stories that go on up there are incredible. Except New Jersey.
Well, that's just.
I don't want to talk about New Jersey one bit. That to me is scary in itself.
Well, yeah, driving through
Oh,
Jersey
dude,
is one of the scariest experiences I've ever had. So,
Yeah.
you know, I would just say that in terms of New England, you have a lot of granite, stone, quartz in the embedded earth. So I feel like those record a lot of the events that had happened. I grew up in an area that used to be colonial homes. You could walk behind the house that I grew up in, and on our property there were foundations for colonial homes, where it was like the rock formations where you could actually see where the houses were built, and for some reason that whole area was abandoned at some time. So there was a kind of eeriness about that growing up, and it was a great place to investigate because I caught some really strange phenomena. And there's been weird stuff there since I was a kid, so that's what actually sparked my interest initially. But you go anywhere in the Northeast and you're going to find stories, and a lot of people attribute it to being the bed of the colonization from Europe, but it's also, I think, the Native American lore. I think it's also just the makeup of the rock and stone there, and people bringing their stuff from other places, because it is kind of a melting pot as well.
Oh no, you've just answered the question I was going to ask. By the way, what was your main feed into the paranormal? You don't wake up and go, oh, yeah, I'm in the paranormal. Normally something brings you there, and as you say yourself, it's the colonial, the area you were raised in. I think it's more fascinating now. Don't get me wrong. I live in a place where I can walk down the bottom of my road and there's a house which is 200 years old. That's Britain. That's how easy it is around here. It's just we've always had it and we've always took it for granted. But still, I'd love to see that type of situation where you can see like the colonial foundations, or you can see what it actually would be like, what it would look like, what area actually is. So that's kind of cool. Now, again, you also run a podcast, don't you? Or you also want to co-host?
I had a podcast for 3 or 4 years. I would say 4 years, but it wasn't totally steady. I did about 2.5 years steady, and it was called Altered States Paranormal Internet Radio. And we interviewed everybody from cryptozoologists to ufologists to demonologists and paranormal investigators, and it was a really good time. I had a lot of fun, but as you guys know, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, there's getting guests and keeping dates open and finding. Yeah, that gets kind of tough sometimes, dude.
You're lying. It's a total breeze.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys are doing live, so that's easier. I did everything because I was an editor. I did everything, and I said, oh, I'll put it together in post. Well, there goes 8 hours of my life I'm never getting back. Yeah. So I spend 8 hours editing the darn thing, and then I eventually get it up, and then I have to just do the next one. And so it ended up being, as much as it was great to get information from all these brilliant people in the field, it was also extremely hard, and it took time away from doing cases at the time. And so that's when I decided to say, okay, I'm going to let this go to bed, and just go do cases. And then I started something called the Paranormal Consultation Network, which was sort of an online resource for people where they could come and find information about stones for protection, herbs, a little understanding about how I view demonology, understanding about Reiki healing, various things from people in the field that I knew were credible and trusted. And then that's another thing that it just took up so much time, and I've been working on my side project documentary for the last 1.5 years, so I sadly had to let that sit back burner too. But I try to always put out resources for people, because I think doing Malevolent Haunt working, it's important for the clients to take a big step on their own. And I think with as many people out there doing paranormal investigation, you don't know what they're going to run into. Look, it's not like demons are around every corner or malevolent deities are around every corner, but at the same time, you go into enough places, you might run into something that's not human, that isn't happy you're there. So I wanted people to have the tools to help themselves out of these situations, because I think it's the most important thing is your own willpower. And that's one of the things we were talking about beforehand with Aleister Crowley. That's his belief, is thelema, your will, if it's connected to the divine, whatever you want to call it, God, source energy, you name it, then you should be protected at all times. But it's getting there, getting that connection that's different for everybody. So I try to approach it in different ways depending on who I'm working with, so that they can feel protected and help reclaim their home. and then preferably do some of that on their own before I get involved, because I can't travel all over the country. I don't have the money to travel all over the country to help people.
Yeah.
It's expensive. So what I can do is give people some tools on their own and send them items on my own cost to try and help them out. And that seems to have worked quite a bit. I've had a lot of success stories doing that, because once people get over the fear and understand that that's a food source for these energies, and they start turning around their home slowly and subtly instead of just going in ranting, raving, or cursing, or exercising, whatever they want to, instead of doing the wrong thing, which is being over the top, do everything in a subtle way, almost like martial arts.
Yeah.
Do you think sometimes, Thomas, that with some of the people that you've talked to, that mental illness plays a role in a lot of demonology, not in some cases that you've ran into, you're like, something's just not clicking.
Absolutely. Psychosis is something that I feel is more prominent than demonic or non-human malevolent cases. So I have two therapists and one psychologist that I consult with that try to help the situation or assess the situation before I will agree to get fully involved with the case, and I mandate that, just like the Catholic Church does. The Catholic Church actually mandates that a full psych profile done before they'll get involved in a case. And I feel the same way, because number one, I would be wasting my time if I were trying to help somebody where it was clearly mental illness and not a negative malevolent case. And two, I'm doing a huge disservice to that person because I'm putting them in harm's way. So I would rather give them the hard answer, which is the truth, versus some easy answer that can never be proven or explained, and letting a person continue with their mental health degrading.
You literally need a letter. It sounds really bad to say. You need a letter from God to ever have any Catholic help with regards to anything like that.
Just none of that. It's the thing. But the part of the problem is, a lot of, at least in American dioceses, a lot of the people I've talked to that are undergoing exorcisms or having these rites performed, it seems as though the priests don't know what they're doing anymore, because it was for a long time thought, oh, well, this isn't actually real, except for the few of the hardcore, and most of them are still in Italy or in Europe, that truly understood these cases and understood what it took to get these entities to vacate. And so in America, you have this whole breadth of people that, I mean, I had one client that their daughter was undergoing exorcisms, but it was only a 45-minute exorcism. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, because you can't even break hands in 45 minutes. So how are you supposed to understand the name of the entity?
Was that Reverend Bob Larson doing that, by the way?
No, no. This was actually a real Catholic diocese.
Okay. I was just double checking. But
I have gotten a lot of referrals from people that had gone to Bob, and I'm not even going to call him Reverend, because we know how that title came about. A lot of people that were going to Bob and weren't getting any help, so I tried to help these people my way, which seemed to do better, and I didn't charge anything compared to the thousands of dollars he was charging. It's sick. I hate to call people out for it, but look, I'm not going to be politically correct and help somebody else screw somebody else out. So I'm going to just be honest. And the honesty is, there are people out there like him that charge money for these things, and they can say, oh, I never did that, but then I have emails from the client saying, well, this is what I got charged. And I'm like, this is unbelievable that you could do this to somebody who's already in pain and hurting.
You're like the walking poster child for actually helping other people in a field where everybody hates each other. Not hate each other, but everybody. It's like being surrounded by paranoid schizophrenics, all holding their own stuff, and like they don't want anybody else to see it, so they keep it to themselves. And you're like the welcome breath of difference, if you get me.
Thank you.
You help out. I think it's brilliant, the fact of everything you do.
I try. I'm not always right. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I'm not always right, because these are forces we don't fully understand. Yeah. And even I don't have all the answers, but I would love to learn and share information with people, because that's how you do it. But there's people that like to hold on to their stuff. Like, they'll only say so much, or they want to sell their book, so they'll only say as much as what's going to be, accessible to people before they buy the book. And I just can't do that, because in all fairness, that's BS. It's total BS. You got people that legitimately need help out there, and if they can't get it unless they buy something from you, then you're a terrible human being. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I understand. I totally agree. I know it's not on the same caliber as what you do, but I had somebody I was associated with on Facebook at one point who had a piece of evidence they wanted to bring forward, and as opposed to just saying, "Listen, guys, what do you think?" They made an amazing introduction, like an advert, and they were like making a build up to it and all that. They started turning into a fanfare. And you know when you sit there and you think, "Why are you bothered?" And at the end of it all, I looked at the evidence they had and I thought, unfriend. And I just thought that person doesn't deserve a place in my life with that type of attitude. It was kind of weird. And then some people are in this for utterly the wrong reasons. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that I'm in for the right reasons, because there's nothing right about running around the building in the pitch black looking for something. There's nothing right there at all. If anything, you're looking to get hurt. But, I mean, I don't know. It's a weird situation we put ourselves in on a regular bleeding basis. So, I mean, I think Johnny Knoxville said it the best: if you're going to be dumb, you've got to be tough. And I'll live by that concept. But,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm going to try and drag some upbeat and more lightheartedness out of this now, right? Your podcast that you ran it for a few years, right? What were the best and the worst things that ever happened on that show for you?
Oh boy.
But put
Just
it this
wait.
way.
Now. You mean wait? Were you talking about the podcast, or were you talking about the Unsealed show?
No, I'm talking about your podcast. I'll talk about your
the podcast.
That's
I mean,
cool.
the worst thing that ever happened. Just a funny story. I was doing the show with my friend Dave Harvey for a couple of years, and there was one episode where we were with one of our friends who was kind of a jokester in the paranormal field, never took anything seriously. Definitely was one of those guys who wanted to be on TV, but he was hilarious. Well, the problem is I was trying to keep a straight face while interviewing him, but Dave's dog kept farting under the table. So it just would be like a waft of disgusting odor, and it would always break my concentration, and I couldn't ask a darn question because that dog just kept releasing noxious gas over and over again. And there were times during the podcast I had to get up and leave the table. And, I was wanting to edit everything out, but I said, you know what, this is one that it would take me 3 days to edit this properly, so I'm just going to leave it. And it went out raw, and people thought it was hilarious. But I'll tell you, my nose has never recovered from that.
Oh, do you know what? I've been there, because I've got a Shih Tzu. He's on the couch now, flat out cold, and he's got a Winnie the Pooh doll that he loves ever so much, a little bit too much, if you get what I mean. And I've been on the show, and me and Kurt have been on, and next minute Kurt gives me that look, as if to say, what's going on in the background, and all I can see is my Shih Tzu Toby riding the Winnie the Pooh stuff toy across the living room. I'm like, and, I mean, do you know what? If I'm going to find the show, because we're going to do an outtakes show over the next couple of weeks, just the things that have happened and failed, and I'm going to find that piece of footage, because all you see on me doing is I'm sitting there looking at the camera and I go, what? And I just sort of drift off and say, what the hell did the dog do? But no.
Dog's having a good time. Dog needs a cigarette after.
Yeah. Dog's looking at me going, human, I need a drink. Oh, no. But, I don't know, without those, like as I said, without the good and the bad on the shows, sometimes it can get a bit monotonous, but in the same breath, I mean, we've had shows where, I mean, especially on Blog Talk, we had the one show where we were talking away, me and Kate, and we had a caller come in on the show, and the caller was drunk. Yep. And I'm trying to remember how the hell it went, but it was like if the caller was either drunk or pretending to be drunk, and we were like, okay, moving swiftly on. Oh, we've had some crazies, but you kind of need them. You kind of need them. But
yeah, it breaks up the monotony.
It does. It does, and it also lets you know how flexible you have to be sometimes. Jesus Christ. Oh, so anyway. You've got projects coming up. I know you were talking about one a little bit earlier. Are you allowed to talk about that on air?
I can talk about my upcoming documentary for sure, because we're going to be releasing the trailer for that in the next. Oh God, help me! If I can get everything approved and get everything licensed and paid for, hopefully by the new year the trailer will be up. And it's about it's called Freedom of the Pack, and it's about the wolf conservation issue that the U.S. is facing right now. And in the sense, the last couple of years, since 2011, the politicians have attacked the Endangered Species Act specifically in a lot of ways to get rid of the gray wolf and the Mexican gray wolf, which are native to the U.S. and were basically obliterated by the early 1900s. So there's been a conspiracy for a long time with cattle lobbyists and livestock lobbyists with politicians to get rid of wolves off the landscape. So we've been basically going after as many interviews as we can to get people that understand the reason we need wolves, and we've seen it with Yellowstone National Park. Now, it has nothing to do with demonology or paranormal, but it's definitely a passion of mine, and it's certainly a conspiracy. So anyone who's seen me on Unsealed Conspiracy Files would know that I'm definitely interested in conspiracies, and this is a pretty big one. Did
you see the trail? They created that one pathway up through Glacier National Park into Canada, I thought, for wolves, and then recently a guy just killed a wolf.
Oh, yeah.
That got out of, was it Yellowstone maybe? I could be wrong.
Well, they've been baiting them out of Yellowstone. That's been a big problem. They've actually been going out and baiting the wolves just outside the border so they can poach them. And
that's wrong.
It's basically canned hunting. That's been one of the issues that we're facing, and there's a group called Wolf Patrol up there that's been doing a really good job trying to stop it. But there's only so many people and so much time and effort. So one of the things we want to do is get information about that out there as well, so people know what's happening. Because it's going to take people telling their politicians that they're over it in order for anything to change. Because right now the politicians are too well paid by their lobbies, and I think if we see a change in that, then we can. I mean, look, if you want to hunt, that's fine. If you're hunting for the sake of eating the animal, I'm all okay with that. But it's another thing altogether when you're just killing it because you're like, just cause.
Yeah, I know there was a dentist. There's a dentist over your way. He went over to Africa. Oh my God! I wish somebody would throw a bolt through his face. But again, I hope his life was ruined by that. Because I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be this big lover of animals, because I know a lot of people are, and I'm not saying that I think that all animals. That I'm not one of those people who actively goes out and donates money to charities involving animals. I just know there's them, there's us, it's just the way it runs. But there's no need for brutality at all. There's no point for it. Now, I know, as you said, there's nothing paranormal about it. There's definitely some conspiracy about it. Of course,
there's a lot of money. A lot of money that goes around. I mean, those poachers pay 30 grand, 50 grand a pop to go out and do this, and a lot of these lions, at least in South Africa, I guess what the problem has been is a lot of the lions were raised as cubs to not fear humans, just so they could go out and be shot by guys or girls, apparently, because there's a lot of hunters on both sides. But that's a whole. The hunting subject is a whole separate thing that I eventually want to get into, but one documentary at a time, because God knows my bank account can't take it. So.
Well, okay. I've got one final question I need to ask you, right? And I know the answer to it before I even ask you it, right? Where editing is concerned, do you ever feel that you are finished editing something? Do you ever sit there and go to something that's finished? Have you ever?
No, I've never. I mean, I've been so sick of stuff that I've said, "Get it away from me." But I've never been done editing and been like, "Yeah, that's my opus. I feel really good about this." It's always going to be. I mean, you always grow. Just same thing with demonology. To bring it back to the consulting. Yeah. It's like I can learn a bunch of stuff and go out and perform ritual after ritual, but if I never change or grow how I do that, then I'm never going to be more effective. And I look the same way at my filmmaking. It's like I'm always learning new techniques or new things or changing how I do things to solve problems, and that's good because it just makes the next thing better and the next thing better. And hopefully eventually people will actually watch some of the stuff I do, and that'd be great outside of the TV because I could be working with crab fishermen the rest of my life, but I'd rather not.
Put it this way. Do you know the way you said you could be working with crab fishermen, right? It's actually big. It's big in Britain.
Oh, crab fishing is big?
No. The deadliest catch is big in Britain.
They get a great overseas. Well, even ice road truckers, I was surprised to hear that UK, like it's huge in the UK, and I'm like, how is that possible? It's a bunch of American and Canadians driving on roads that are made of ice. Like, don't you guys have that over there?
Yeah, we do, but the roads we have made of ice have got about 4 millimeters of ice on them. Oh. It's pathetic and boring. Over here, dude, I'm not even gonna lie to you. Google trucker, British trucker. Just Google it. It's just some fat dude with like stupid hair who sleeps in his wagon at night. It's not. At least what you guys have got over there is kind of glamorous. Even the
Well,
serial
yeah,
killers.
the rigs are bigger for sure because they have to be. I mean, they're literally driving over swampland out there, which is crazy. But then when you hit the lakes, I mean, that's the thing. You can't in my work, like I designed a new way in which we approached every ice crossing, and that was how we had the people get out of the truck and look over the ice and have these moments of like contemplations, like, am I going to do this or am I not going to do this? And we designed that because there's no way to actually tell somebody at home how terribly frightening it is to put your tires on the ice initially, and that was the closest we could come. Because I grew up in New England, so you would drive the trucks on the ice in order to just get out to your Bob house or go fishing or whatever. And even with a small truck, there's always that first moment of, is it holding? All right, I think we're okay. All right, yeah, it's fine. And then you get out there and you're like, oh, okay, maybe I'm safe. And then you hear something crack and you're like, nope, not safe. And that's what we try to do with that show, because it is dangerous. And people say, oh, it's boring, the same thing over and over again. But the truth is, you do never know what's going to happen. And this past season, one of our guys went out and literally went through the ice and barely was able to save his truck. And the camera guy came back and was like, this was just a mess. Like, this is effed. I can't believe this happened. Like, they were shaking, and you can't convey that to somebody at home and then have them believe it, because the first thing out of everyone's mouth was, oh, that was totally fake, dude. That truck didn't go through the ice. I'm like, yeah, it did. It actually went through the ice, because I'm not a BS artist, and I'm going to tell you that driver was nervous.
Yeah, no, dude, I can imagine. As I said, over in Britain, I mean, in America, you get snow. You get like 4 foot of snow, and you've got to dig your car out in the morning and drive to work. In Britain, we get like a light drizzle of snow, which takes up 3 millimeters, and the planet grinds to a halt. And we're all like in the house looking out, going, it's white. I don't get it. I'll never understand it.
But that's a great thing to go out and get pictures of orbs, though, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I had to.
Oh, you had to throw that out, dude.
People are going to get so angry at me, but I had to do that.
No. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the orb comment, because that's just going to fall awash into a sea of orb jokes that we come out with on a regular basis.
Oh, good. I love it. Yeah, my favorite is every time somebody shows me a picture of orbs, like, I caught all these spirits, and I'm looking at the snow, and I'm thinking to myself, please tell me there's something I'm not seeing in this picture.
Or the ones with faces, those are the best. When it's pareidolia. Dude, Matrix thing, dude, you're going, dude, that's just Matrix. It's your mind already knows.
I don't even see a face. Well, I try to do the magic eye thing so I can see if it pops out at me, but it just never works.
It's not going like that.
It just never works. I mean, look, not to say that there may not be orbs that are legit, but I've yet to see more than a handful of photographs that I'm like, oh, maybe there's something to it. But almost all the time I'm like, dude, why does everyone think they have evidence? Like, I don't understand how you call one photograph evidence. If you have like 4 things at the same time, okay, maybe something's happening there, but one picture of snow doesn't tell me that you had a paranormal experience.
I've got this funny feeling it's more down to the person himself, the overanalyze the evidence they're looking at. I don't know. I could show you screenshot after screenshot that I don't want to do it, because in case the people watch the show and I make them feel sad and they might cry or something like that. But you get that image, like, well, my friend took this picture in his mum's living room, and his mum's dog died 6 years ago, and this looks like his nan. And what do you think? I'm like, I don't know you, mate. I don't know his nan. You took it on a camera phone. I see darkness. You've wasted me time. Can we go away from this conversation now? And it's, I don't know, it was sort of, sadly, as the paranormal, especially for us, where we actually actively investigate and try to offer help, we've sort of dig ourselves a little bit of a grave with stuff like that, because then all we get is well, this looks like my nan, what do you think? I think it looks like a ball of light in the distance, which might be just dust reflecting off the flash. Yeah. Just saying, like, it could be. And you're like,
I mean, I've gotten to the point where I stop, because nobody wants to hear the truth. So what you tell them, what I tell them is generally, oh, that's interesting. I wasn't there, so I really can't validate, but I do know that the camera has this malfunction to it or that malfunction. And that's the funny thing, working in TV and film, it's how cameras are affected by light and by reflection. So I'm just like, well, the refraction of the lens that you might have had, or if you had a cover over your iPhone, I mean, it could have easily been that. I mean, that's the other thing that irks me is iPhone photos. Oh, God. iPhone photos. That is not a paranormal investigative tool. I'm sorry. No. It's a phone. It's a lovely device, and it's made us a lot easier to get in touch with people. But I just don't see how that's a legitimate tool for finding paranormal activity.
can I give you my most definitive use for an iPhone or an Android phone when it comes to paranormal investigation?
Yes.
Phone and food in the middle of an investigation. It's for phone and a pizza. That's the only use it's done. It's when we've done it a few weeks ago where it's been, right, okay, is everybody ready yet? Yeah, can I have a pizza to this place, please?
Yeah.
And it's all you can do. Don't get me wrong, me and Kate do use our phones heavily for, like, obviously for what's happened between each other, to say what's happening this week, what's going on with this show.
Yeah, we're always in touch every week.
And we do a lot of filming, as I know Kate does a lot of filming as well over his side. And the filming we do on our phone, it's not filming in the dark. It's when you've got like a small clip of video you want to do. You get your phone.
Yeah.
Film on your phone. It's not bad. It's enough to throw up on YouTube. You're never going to get 4K recording. It's not a Red Epic. It definitely isn't a C300. It's just literally a camera phone.
Yeah.
It does
exactly. Exactly. Like, you know, I mean, part of the reason I bought the A7S, the Sony, for my documentary was the low light capability. But I found that on investigations, it's also been super helpful, because when you have that full frame sensor and you have all that data being absorbed, you might catch something. And I've surprisingly caught more EVP off of that thing than I have off of anything else.
You will do.
But that camera's been amazing. That camera's been fantastic. But yeah, then you go to somebody I mean, like, look, not everybody can afford a camera like that, and I understand. But using your cell phone, there's just so many variables and so many apps out there. It just makes more sense. Buy a cheap digital camera. You can buy them for $100 and use that instead. At least it's a dedicated device set for the investigation, as opposed to something that you could throw a bunch of apps on and put ghosts on all you want.
Yeah.
Because we get photos all the time that are ghost app, and I'm like, you're shitting me, right? Like, this is you're seriously telling me you caught a ghost when I know what app it is. That's like Little Annabelle Ghost. I know that one.
I got kicked off a historical society group for doing exactly what you just said. Some guy sent me a picture through. He was like, I took this myself. Oh, no, I never took this myself. Somebody took it. This person is really credible. What do you think? And I just looked at the picture and responded. As it's very technically, I responded exactly, with etiquette. I said, bullshit. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, no longer part of that group. I was like, oh, we could have had some form of argument.
Look, you know what? When you shrink your circles, you end up in better company. That's all I'm going to say. People don't always like what I have to say, because it requires thinking and a little bit of understanding and patience. But I'm apparently an idiot because I don't know how to deal with these haunts. Other people think they know better. They go, and then all of a sudden they're in the hospital with kidney failure or having issues, and I'm still doing this work, and I've been very fortunate and very lucky, but I think a lot of it's because I don't have the ego. It's like I just don't. Yeah. You can't do this and have that big of an ego, because you're just gonna get hurt.
Yeah, exactly. People who go investigating houses walk in, and they'll investigate the house from top to bottom. They may have a client, and at the end of it, the client goes, "So," and you go, "Yeah, your house is haunted. Bye."
Yeah.
There's no help. There's no nothing. It's just like, thanks for letting us come round and look at your house, and
Well, the best is, like, we'll get those calls. We get those calls, and then there's also, like, somebody will email me saying, yeah, a team went into this house and they left saying there was a demon, and then they just left us hanging. So can you come in and help us? We think we have a demon. And then the family's more scared than they were initially. And you go in, and there's no demon. There's nothing there except for maybe a transient spirit that just happened to, make a couple noises. It's like, none of this evidence signifies a demonic entity, let alone any sort of malevolent entity. It's just something there, which is easily dealt with or talked with or able to be rectified some way, and then the family's fine. But to put the family in a position where they're terrified because somebody in the group thought they were a psychic, that's another thing that irks me, is people that always think they're psychic. And it's like, they were a psychic, they came in, oh, there's a demon here. You wouldn't know a demon if it bit you in the ass. You seriously have no idea. And then you want to say, what books have you read? And they're like, well, I've watched Ghost Adventures, or I've watched Dead Files, or I've watched this. It's like, okay, just because you sat on your ass in front of your TV does not mean you understand these things. Have you read any books? Have you even read the Bible all the way through? Because you claim to be you're a Christian. So what's, where are your contexts from the Bible as to what it is? Okay, then, you don't know, and that's fine, but just admit you don't know instead of telling somebody that there's something horrible in their home and then leaving. It's like saying your house is infested with termites and it's falling down, but I'm going to go now, and you can get somebody else to deal with it.
Yeah, I think it's perfect. And do you know what the best part about it is? The paranormal investigation groups you're talking about there, who will walk into a property, they'll look at it, they'll go, yeah, that's haunted, and walk away, or you've got a demon, and run away.
Yeah.
They're the type of people, when they get in the car, they're like, yeah, we've done really well there. They all high-five each other, then go home.
On to the next.
Yeah, and then they go home and watch Ghost Adventures marathons and stuff like that, because that's how you research properly.
Well, they go to Denny's first, and then they go to Ghost Adventures. I don't know if you guys got Denny's in the UK, but it seems to be every team I talk to, they end up at a Denny's afterwards, and I'm like, I don't know. One of the things I changed getting into this work was how I ate too, because that was something that was consistent with all the text I was reading, was diet and how it affects your health, as well as how it affects your interaction with these entities. And so I worked really hard to change my diet, especially before cases. And now it's become just normal practice for me. But I mean, you go to Denny's before a case, you eat a big old honking hamburger with no lettuce on it, big side of fries, put some gravy on it or something, and then look, and it sounds delicious, but at the same time, like, those are all the wrong foods to eat before you go on a case with a possibly malevolent entity. And then you come out afterwards after having done probably nothing except for feed this thing, and then you go back to Denny's and you get a big old plate of chicken tenders or chicken fried steak or whatever. You eat that, and then you go to bed after watching Ghost Adventures or something.
Have you ever noticed, Mo and Thomas, that some of these paranormal teams out there are ginormous? And I think it's from the Denny's that we're talking about. I think we've narrowed it down to the Denny's. That I'm not one to talk about being thin, believe me. I'm not. But do you understand that you look at this all black, and no, it's not thinning. It's not a thinning color. Yeah.
You're starting a fight. Me and you're starting a fight.
What's that?
I'm plus sized. You great big bastard. I'm plus sized.
Look, so am I. So am I. But you know what? There was a point where I was 300 pounds, and it was like. And I'm not, and to some people that's not very big, but to me that was really unhealthy.
That's not how you feel, you know. I mean. Yeah,
and I felt terrible, and I was eating all the wrong stuff. But I noticed doing the cases, like, I was way more drained afterwards, especially when I was doing ritual magic. It just was, it would take it out of me. So then, when I was reading, one of my favorite books is the Book of Abramelin the Mage, and it's a 1500s essentially book that talks about a man who went on a mystical journey and the advice he gives to his son about ritual magic. And one of the things he said is no red meat before cases, or before, well, he would do it before ritual. No red meat, pretty much take it out of your diet, a lot of vegetables, and then a lot of sunlight. And one of the things I thought, like, okay, well, vitamin D deficiency is huge.
Yeah.
Like, that's running rampant right now. So I started upping my vitamin D3. I started eating a lot healthier before cases. And then Barry actually mentioned to me something about fish oil, omega-3 in the body, because that's another thing that the diet has kind of destroyed, is our omega-3 intake. So I started doing those three things on a regular basis, and I noticed I did not have problems anymore. I would feel great after cases and great after doing ritual. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And thinking about how the demonic influences, or how the non-human malevolence influence people, during the oppression stage, they start isolating the individual and cutting off that person's ability to get sunlight, because they usually keep them in dark and closed spaces. And then also iron deficiency is common with these cases in that sense. And iron, we all know iron from mythology is one of the greatest tools to fight negative entities, especially the Fey folk.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you have just their diet goes to high amounts of sugar, it destroys and compromises their immune system. So it makes sense that these things also feed off the physical as well as the non-physical aspects of us. And simply by changing people's diets a little bit, it has helped a lot of my cases where people have felt way better and they haven't been as drained and the entities backed off. And then they've been able to implement other things that are subtle techniques.
And plus, with changing the diet too, Thomas, even exercise, positive energy, it brings about more of a positive feel. Like you go to the gym, you make sure you don't eat too much. You know, it's just more of a positive feel. And I think it's easier to deal with these issues you got going around you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. I didn't really ever think of that, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I like to tie it together because it makes sense, and because I've seen its effects. And that's the cool part is, you know, I tried it on myself before I would tell anyone else to do it, and it's just been astonishing how it's helped people.
That's cool, dude.
I actually do have one more question before we decide to, because we're coming close to a close now, but you've just mentioned the Fey folk, right? And there's another I don't know whether we'll class it mythical creature or mythical folklore. The jinn.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How much have you looked into that?
Oh, quite a bit. Had to. I mean, you never know what you're going to run into, so you got to read everything you can. One of the first accounts I've read about the jinn actually comes from a Sumerian text, or Assyrian, depending on when they were took over. But essentially, it's a really ancient text that, when translated, speaks to them, and all of the name was different, but all of the characteristics were the same.
Yeah.
And knowing that, it helped me to relate it to other things like the Fae folk, and actually similarities between the jinn and the Fae folk.
Yeah.
So there are strange commonalities between different belief systems and these entities. So it's funny because when we think jinn, you initially think, oh, it's from the Islamic faith, but it's not.
Yeah.
It predates that big time. So these are very old, very dangerous entities, and in fact, even in understanding goetic magic and goetic demons, which is a Kabbalistic sense of magic, you have these entities that are labeled jinn because they are very powerful and they are ancient and they're demigods essentially, and it fits a lot with the activity that I've seen related to their cases. And I've had a few cases where it has been jinn, and they are by far the most terrifying and the most difficult cases to try to resolve, and some of which have never been resolved. And even on my end, it's just, there's only so much you can do with these things. And my thing is, a lot of people barter with them. I don't believe in that because you're just giving up a piece of yourself to these energies. So I try to work from the older texts that didn't require you giving them stuff.
Yeah.
Because I just don't necessarily believe in that end of it. But it's still been terrifying and very difficult cases for sure.
I remember hearing a story about 4 years ago about a jinn procession walking through a town and taking one of the town's elders' children. And what it was is, when the jinn procession went through, you were meant to go into your home and let the jinn procession go past. And this girl was watching through the window, and one of the jinn in the procession, not the one who was leading it, I think it was a king or something, I don't know what they claimed it as, one of the procession took the child. He looked in the window. She was like a teenager, and he took her. And the father, he looked and waited for the procession, and the leader of the procession got down off his horse and came over and said, "Give me a reason not to do something." And he explained what has happened. And the jinn calls the guy up who took the daughter, said, "Get her back." Got the daughter back and beheaded the jinn. And it was a weird story, but it was the only time I ever heard of a jinn tale, even though it's anecdotal. But it was the only time I ever heard a story where it was actually the jinn who stood forward and done something that was not selfish or nasty.
Well, some of them. I mean, the way because reading the different mythologies on them, the way I've read it from the various sources is that they are conscious entities on themselves. They're like people. So there are some that they basically, like, we're like ants. They don't care about us.
Yeah.
And so it's not like malicious. It's just, whatever. Fine. I don't care. If you just, like, you can let an ant live by letting it go outside the door, or you can squash it. And sometimes you squash it, sometimes you let it go. So that's my opinion how they look at us. But then there's some that just feel like we are, just like people that torture animals. There are some that will do that to us, and will take human brides is a big thing in Islam, where somebody's promised to a jinn, and that goes back to the Sumerian time too. Bloodletting rituals for them, giving of, like, even in kind of one of the old Jewish faiths was to give a goat to God and a goat to I believe it was a Zazel, and that was technically another demigod jinn type entity. So I mean, that goes through history, but it doesn't mean that every single one is bad. It also doesn't mean that everyone is good. But it's just a crapshoot because they are a conscious entity. And that's how I treat everything. Is it's every individual entity I come across, I always initially start with open communication, because it could be a misunderstanding on how the activity's happening, or it could be doing things just to get energy because it's needing energy. And so I always try to have that open communication initially, because you don't know where it's coming from.
Exactly.
And once you understand intent, then you move forward based on on what you have. But it's just like dealing with a person. If like you were a cop, like you don't just shoot the person. Well, maybe nowadays you do, but I mean, you don't just shoot the person and then drag the body away and call it good. You have to try to reason with them first and see what the intent is, so you know where they're going and how you can work with that or work against that. And that's the same thing, and sadly, the smarter the entity, the older the entity, the harder it is to assess the truth behind the matter, because they do have a knowledge of things that is far greater than ours, and I don't believe they're restricted by time either. So the timeline is already consciously aware to them. We are the ones struggling to kind of grasp at straws and see where things are going, but I'd rather take the time to do that than rush into something and then realize, oh, I've just stepped into the ring with something way beyond what I can handle, and that's just dumb. I don't want to do it. I don't want to be stupid. I want to be in a position to help the client and help the energy.
No, that makes total sense. I mean, with regards, as I said, with regards to like the Fae, with regards to Jinn, they are, again, with extended consciousness, especially consciousness over time, comes intelligence. With intelligence, unfortunately, comes, if you're devious, becomes something we cannot handle, no offense, regardless to how much you study something.
Absolutely.
10, 20, 30, 40 years, something that could live for hundreds of years, maybe, just saying. That's a bad situation, because you've got something that's got a head start and a half on you.
Exactly.
You can only do the best of what you've got. So again, I mean, okay, let me see if I can word this politely. I've got a lot of respect for you, you crazy individual.
Thank you, sir. I'll take it. Hey, I'm a happy, crazy man. If I could say one last thing before we go, because I know we're running late.
Of course, man.
A lot of people look at these things as big, scary, gnarly, ugly, terrible things that do these things because they just want to be terrible. One of the things that, in my belief, from all my reading and from my experience, is one of the original ideas of Satan was these entities known as Shatin, which were adversaries. And one of the Kabbalistic viewpoints on these entities is they were meant to challenge us to prove our worthiness of God. So one of the things I always tell people, whether you believe in God or believe in a single source or believe in nothing, if you take anything from that statement, it's know that these things are there to challenge you to be better. Whether it's to be better physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it is, it's meant to better you in the end. So don't look at it as you're cursed or this is just, this is shit and I can't believe this is happening to me. And sometimes it's wrong place, wrong time, but I think a lot of times whatever divine forces are out there allow these things to happen so that we can learn. And I'm not saying all the time, because there are some people whose circumstances are so terrible and no one should have to endure it. But a lot of times I think that's what we're dealing with, is an opportunity to better ourselves and to understand ourselves and the world around us way more than we would have if we were just sitting there eating our Denny's and not worrying about anything but Ghost Adventures is on tonight.
Yeah, no, I'll give you that. Thank God you've pulled that in at the end. Right, well, as I said, unfortunately, this is the end of the show. I'm over the moon that you've came on. It's been a really good show.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
And again, I normally, what I do, which is, keep looking down, I'll write questions beforehand. I'll always throw a few questions down, one, maybe two, or in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 15, 16-ish. And it's normally, as I'm talking to you, I think, I'll talk about that, and everything that I've pointed out, you've already answered. So it's kind of, if this was a job interview, you would have got the job about an hour ago.
Awesome.
But now,
maybe it was. I don't know. Maybe this was a job interview. I can't tell.
You hired. I hired a phone and pizza. That's about all we did.
Yeah. Use your paranormal equipment to order some pizza now. We'll be set.
Don't worry. Right, now, again, is there, how long did you say we've got to wait till you release the advertisement for you, or the
teaser trailer will be out by the new year, and you'll be able to find it at our website, www.freedomofthepack.com, and we'll also have it on, I'll have it all over my Facebook page as well.
I'll link that to the show notes for the show, and I'll also link it to the show notes in the podcast on the group as well. But again, thank you very much for coming on. Thanks very much for...
Thanks so much, Thomas.
This has been amazing. Thank you guys so much. You made it so much fun.
I'm very pleased to talk to somebody who also has equally as good a beard as I've got.
I can't grow a beard, dude. I'm I'm
Wait,
cursed.
okay.
I'm cursed.
No,
but
you're
you
not.
guys aren't. I am.
This is only 3 days. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about.
Are you serious?
No. I mean,
I was going to say, I was like, whoa.
Kate, when you get to 14 years of age, you'll be able to grow a beard.
Dude, I'm 46, and I can't grow a beard or a mustache. I don't even want a mustache. I want a beard like that.
Mustaches right now, dude. Mustaches right now.
Like a curly one. Just get a curly one.
No, I gotta go the one that goes down like that, you know?
Dude, my dad grows one of them. It's amazing. It's like this little weird. Looks like he's fell out of a Metallica. It's great.
See, that's what I'm cursed. I'm cursed.
I'll take it as it is. Right, well, sadly, this is the end of season 2 for our show as well. There will be a season 3. It won't be next week. It will be the week after. I've got other pressing engagements to go to, which is far more important than talking to Kate for an hour and a half or an hour. I'm only messing. We're going to take a break so that we can change the format, get a little bit better, and hopefully come back with a lot more for you guys. So, again, thank you very much for coming on, Kate. Thank you very much for listening to the crap for an hour. And again, we'll catch you all soon. See you again, guys.
All right, see you.
Bye now.
Bye now.
Bye.